Okay, sorry. Minutes of the previous meeting, March 3rd, 2022. Moved by Brian, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Carried. Any conflict of interest, pecuniary interest disclosure? Hearing none. Consent items, OPP report, January to March 2022.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. Hope everybody has been well. I certainly would like to take you to the first page of the report, the detachment commander's message. I'm sure that I hope that everybody has had a chance to read the report. Certainly, January to March of this year were unlike any year our detachment and probably organization, province, or country have ever experienced. I'd certainly like to highlight a couple of things. Probably the most significant that impacted the detachment and our overall operations was the Freedom Convoy that occurred up in Ottawa. The SDG detachment, because of our proximity to the city of Ottawa, but not only because of our proximity to the city of Cornwall, our members were called upon, and that was the entire detachment that was called upon to really provide assistance to the Ottawa Police Service and the Cornwall Community Police Service. We provided the Cornwall Community Police Service with border integrity, services. The demonstration that occurred on a Saturday afternoon that blocked the Seaway International port of entry. There was some significant concern that that might reoccur. So the SDG detachment, along with Cornwall Police Service, the RCMP, and the Canada Border Service, Akwesasne Mohawk Police, paired together as a united command to ensure that we had a extremely robust plan to ensure that the Seaway International Bridge would not be disrupted in any way. I can tell you that during that time, it was the first time in my policing career where I've seen the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police invoke mandatory standby time. And if you're not familiar with that mandatory standby time, so all vacation was, all discretionary leave was canceled by members, and members that were not working their regular shift were put on standby. Because of our obligations down in Cornwall and up in Ottawa that we needed to support the Ottawa Police Service with the convoy there, I can tell you that pretty much our members were working 7 days out of 7. So if they were not working their regular patrol or their regular administrative duties Monday to Friday, they were working night shifts on the weekend, night shifts and weekend shifts, either down here in Cornwall or up in Ottawa. I know it was a tremendously strenuous time on our members, but I was extremely proud of the way they really persevered and pushed through. You know, there were some very, very long days, especially for those people that worked up in Ottawa, and especially during the 2 days, 3 days of positive action. You know, some of the members up that were working up in Ottawa pushed nearly 23-hour days. So they would sleep for maybe 2 to 4 hours, be woken back up again, and said, we got to get back at it. We got to clear the streets of Ottawa. So again, I would just like to highlight that as something very important that happened during the reporting period, and just, you know, how proud I was of all the members of the SDG detachment. You know, they really stepped up to the plate. You know, we got zero pushback from our members. Zero. We didn't get one person say, oh, I don't want to work here, I don't want to work there. They all understood their responsibilities as being part of the Provincial Police Service and our responsibilities to not only the community in SDG, but the greater province. And yeah, they really stepped up to the plate. I'd also like to highlight that we were the recipients in January 2022 of a grant, along with 3 community partners, to combat and assist victims of human trafficking. That grant was authored by Acting Inspector Simon Hardy, and we are currently in the process of moving through that grant right now. It involves some additional community support services, but mostly it involves training for the officers. to recognize the signs of human trafficking and really support victims of human trafficking that are occurring within our area. We were also told in February of 2022 that the OPP and the Cornwall Community Hospital had been recipients of a mobile crisis response team enhancement grant. That was for $150,000 total dollars. So that is an enhancement grant to the current program. So it does not replace any funding that's going to the current program. It was actually to enhance and bring our coverage up even to a greater level. I can tell you because of the late notice about the grant, and the Freedom Convoy activities, we actually applied to the ministry for not only an extension but a carryover of the year one funds into year two, because it was just not feasible for us to be able to execute A, the hiring, but B, the goals of the grant, given that short window of time in the Government of Ontario's fiscal year, but also you know, with the Freedom Convoy, one of the programs that had to be stood down was our MCRT. You know, that was the last program to go, but those officers that are directly assigned to the program with the hospital and with the nurse, they had to go on frontline patrol, or they had to be up in Ottawa, or they had to be down at the port of entry. We just did not have a choice. You know, those were the priority frontline policing priorities.
You said that you're going to apply for extra funding through a grant funding stream. Did you get it?
So the permanent base funding. So Mayor McGillis, if I understand your question properly, so I think we're talking about two different things. So the initial funding, we get a large portion from the United Counties, and then we do have some base funding that the ministry has provided the hospital. The grant that I was referring to, that is completely separate. So that was an enhancement on what we already had for services. The business case I've referred to in the past, that has been submitted. Or I should retract that statement. The business case was fully prepared. It was supported. We received some guidance from the ministry telling us that during the provincial election or before the election to hold back on submitting that business case to the ministry, that it was not an ideal time, that they were making, that they had other funding priorities. Specific to mental health activities, specific to other policing activities, and that the ministry was concerned that if we submitted that business case in the spring or now closer to the provincial election, that it was going to get lost in the shuffle. It wasn't going to get it read, it wasn't going to get action. So the hospital was very attuned with the Health Network and Health East, and Health East was able to come back and say, just wait a few months, you know, we'll give you a signal. But they've already seen a draft copy of the joint business case we did with Cornwall Police and the hospital, and we're hopeful that when we get the green light and say now is an opportune time to submit this, that it'll be acted on very quickly.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, and I've been asked this question often. Is the cost for the payments for different police officers that had to attend all the stuff that was going on in Ottawa, was there any cost to the taxpayer locally here at this time?
No, there was not, Mr. Mayor. All of those costs, those are in the municipal policing bill. That falls on your base cost for service, those provincial responsibilities. So all of those calls for service, including assisting the Cornwall Police Service in this area or anything that happened, they were all costed back to the province, so to the provincial portion of the billing model. So there's no cost, and in fact, the federal government of Canada is costing all those policing costing back to the government of Ontario. So we were very, very meticulous in ensuring that all of our time, all of our expenses, everything was very, very detailed and cataloged. So when the federal government came, or the OPP came asking to journal back to the federal government, we were very well prepared, and there's been no additional cost to the billing model to the residents or to the counties. Or I'm sorry, if I could take you to page 9, I would just simply like to highlight the importance. You'll see that our community street crime unit has been, is always very, very active. And you will see that throughout the report, no matter what month you look in, and moving forward in the future, you will see that we are engaging in greater collaborative investigations with the City of Cornwall. We have formed a joint team after some analysis, because what we have found is the community street crime team, their mandate to address drug-related and property-related crimes, we have found that the concentration of trafficking that occurs comes from the City of Cornwall. So we're not seeing it come from Ottawa and Montreal and Toronto into the counties. We're seeing it come to Cornwall first, and then it gets spread out. So it made very good public safety sense and analysis to team up with the Cornwall Community Police Service together to form a joint team to work within the city and within the counties, because that way we're stopping the flow that's coming from the city. We're also providing the Cornwall Community Police Service with some valuable assistance. I would like to comment as well that since Chief Spowert took over in the summer of 2021, that the collaboration between the SDG detachment and the Cornwall Community Police Service has never been greater. So we are inviting each other. We're trying to do a lot more joint activities, not just community service-based activities, but also enforcement activities together to really enhance that policing model. Or that collaborative policing model throughout not only the City of Cornwall but the counties. It goes the same thing with the Akwesasne Mohawk Police. We're really trying to enhance that joint policing, and I think that really sends a positive message to the public that we serve. That it doesn't matter what the patch on our shoulder says; it's that we are all committed to working together towards greater community safety. On page 11 of 25, yes, our patrol hours are definitely down. And as I move further into the report, you're just going to see that I'm going to refer back to the Freedom Convoy. I'll just say that February was a write-off for us. I have no other way to describe it. We were, our proactive policing activities during the month of February, simply because of our staffing levels, were just were minimal, to put it in the best terms possible. And this is understood, like I said, the members were working, for a month, the members were working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts. So when they weren't, once again, helping the Ottawa Police Service or helping the Cornwall Community Police Service, they were doing their regular jobs, and they were tired. So when they could catch a breath, they caught a breath. So we did have some decreased patrol hours. I was happy to see that our foot patrol hours continue to rise. That is in large part due to the staffing updates, where we have 5 new provincial constables that have joined us. And part of their mandate that I have given them is they have mandatory foot patrol hours that they need to conduct. I know within the counties we don't have very large municipalities, and foot patrol hours can be sometimes challenging, but we still do have areas where they can be done. They can be done on St. Lawrence Street in Winchester, Main Street Winchester, Main Street Alexandria. There are lots of places where they can get out and take a walk and say hello. So I've really put an emphasis on that, especially with our new recruits coming into the detachment. I asked that Kim hand out an additional sheet. So on page 14 to 25, it's just the updated sheet. Our Highway Traffic Act charges are still continue to show that they are trending downward. I know that our last PSB meeting, Mr. Chair, I spoke to the PSB and I committed to a 15 to 20% increase in traffic related safety activities. Even with what occurred in February, if you look at the left side of the page on the third graph, the proactive traffic safety activities, we are actually up 31% and 21%. So that tells me that our members are out there, they're doing ride, they're stopping cars, they're just writing less tickets. And that is also reflected in the collision statistics that I will talk about on page, pardon me. Maybe I didn't tab that one. Sorry about that. That is reflective in page 12 of 25, where although we saw an increase in property damage collisions and personal injury collisions, we've seen no increase in fatal motor vehicle collisions. So as I've alluded to or spoken to before, you know, the true measure for me of traffic safety is what are we seeing happening on our roadways? Are we seeing a reduction in fatal motor vehicle collisions and personal injury motor vehicle collisions? I can tell you that year to date, I ran the statistics just before I came in the meeting, and we are trending up. So in the next report, you will see everything actually in the positive side. So we are trending up not only in Highway Traffic Act charges, but traffic safety activities altogether. So in the second quarter, you will see a significant increase compared to last year. And that's in the 20 to 25% range for those, as I have pledged. We continue to see, just on page 16, we're seeing an increase in our criminal record checks. You can see there's been a massive increase, especially in the vulnerable sector checks. We just are seeing more and more organizations which are requiring a vulnerable sector check. There is going to be some pushback from our organization about that. Because there are organizations who are coming saying they need a vulnerable sector check and they don't need one. And you know, with a vulnerable sector check, it's a much more involved criminal record check. It takes much more time to complete. There is an associated fee with it, but still it's time consuming, and those the activities people are applying for do not require a vulnerable sector check.
I read somewhere in you know, if you were asking for a, you know, if you apply for a new job, you want to do a background check if you are a criminal. But now they're doing this online. So is that going to help out a lot?
Yes, as of the 13th of June, we will be moving to an online model where all criminal record checks, the public will be told, unless there are very extenuating circumstances, that will be moving to an online model. So there will still be some work done at the detachment, but the bulk of the work will sort of be done online, and it'll be a provincial unit that will be looking after that. We still, during the first phase of the criminal record checks, there still will be a high level of in-person customer service, but that customer service nobody will be able to do it by hand and by pen and paper. It will all, you know, our detachment administrative clerks will be assisting the public in showing them how to complete them online. And if there is a problem, like they just can't do it online for some reason, there will always be the backup of the absolute paper copy, but that will be an absolute last resort for those. On page, so on page 23, and this will allude to the motor vehicle collisions. We did see a pretty big increase year over year for the personal motor vehicle collisions, the property damage ones. We had two pretty significant snowstorms in January, and those really bumped things up. I know that myself and my two acting staff sergeants had to actually go out on patrol that day because we were helping clean those cars up. So there was a big, two significant weather events really made a change in the year over year. We didn't have the same type of snow we had in January compared to 2021. And in page 25 of 25, just the memorandum from Chief Superintendent Kara Myers of our Communications and Technology Service Bureau. So the Ontario Provincial Police will be the first major police service in Ontario to move to body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. So right now we are at the phase, and East Region will be the first. Right now we are at the phase where the Lennox and Addington, or Napanee detachment, they have had all the car cameras installed in their vehicles, and every frontline patrol member has received their body-worn camera, so they are fully online. Like anything else, we are experiencing supply chain issues. So the project for the rest of for the rest of Eastern Ontario has slowed somewhat, particularly with the body-worn cameras. It's not so much we have everything we need for the in-car cameras. You can expect to see the in-car cameras rolling in our vehicles by the end of August. So every frontline patrol vehicle will be equipped with a front-facing camera out the windshield. There'll also be a rear-facing camera. And all of those front-facing cameras as well will have automatic license plate readers directly embedded in them. So that will connect directly to the officer's tablet in the vehicle, and if there's anything with a license plate or the registered owner of that license plate, they will receive a prompt on their computer screen telling them that there's an issue. The body-worn cameras themselves will be directly on the officer's uniform. They will be expected to wear them at all times, and there will be standard operating procedures about when and where they are, where and how they are activated. So there'll be very specific guidelines as to protecting people's privacy in certain situations. You know, the officers will not be turning them on at all times, but you will see them. You will see them probably by the fall with another piece of kit on their vests, and that will be their body-worn cameras. And pending any questions, Mr. Chair, that is my report.
Thanks, Mark, for the report, and kudos to you and your staff in regards to the numerous challenges you've had in the last area. The public, I think, was certainly happy to see some affirmative action taken in regards to understanding who's in control. So well done on that aspect. But my question actually relates to the body cameras. This has been discussed in the past, and there was always a privacy issue that was fairly contentious as to whether or not this would go ahead. But given the change, and this being now seen as an asset to the work that the police officers are doing, do you see us now actually considering photo radar as well? Or is that subject still off limit?
I certainly think from my perspective, from a traffic safety perspective, I think photo radar would be an absolutely fantastic thing. I truly do believe that it would be, because there are just not enough, patrol vehicles out there to control the speeds on every road. I believe that it is a political hot potato that nobody wants to touch at the moment. I'm sure, as we all remember, right, in the early 90s when photo radar was there, and I believe it was brought in by the NDP government, or was it the Harris government? It was the Ray government. Yes, it was terribly unpopular with the motoring public, especially in Toronto. So although I support it as a traffic safety measure, I just don't think there's the political will to implement it right now.
I guess the reason for my comment is we continue to struggle with 138, and you know, it's easy to envision how that road would operate if we had more diligence as far as watching how people are driving, because the road itself seems to be designed very effectively, but merciful days, there's some terrible drivers on there.
I would absolutely agree with you. And in my quarter two report, part of that, in my next report to the board, part of that report we will be addressing the 138. We'll be addressing some of the concerns that were brought forth to the minister and to the media. I agree with you. It's a difficult road to drive. We've all driven on the 138. It's a difficult road to drive on. I can tell you it's a difficult road to enforce on because there are very few passing opportunities. Traffic oftentimes get queued. You know, we've looked and looked at areas where we might set up stationary speed enforcement, and they are just very, from an officer's safety point of view, they're very challenging to set up in. You know, we need to be in an area where, yes, we want to be able to do that enforcement where we see the areas that are problematic, where the unsafe passing is definitely occurring in the speeding. But at the same time, right, I've got to look out for, I got to make sure my officers are safe on the side of the road, right, while they're doing that enforcement. So certainly something like photo radar would, and especially one that would be mobile, where we would be able to move it, you know, in consultation with the counties and with the Ministry of Transportation, would be very beneficial on a road like the 138.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would be great if we could move a photo radar and put some of the streets in our, you know, villages, because I'm still getting a lot of complaints. I went to a wedding yesterday, and in Ottawa, and I received 2 complaints about people speeding on 2 different streets in Long Sault. But that would be a good thing if it could be mobile. Yeah, what was another thing I want to mention? I'll mention that later on. But yeah, and I'll concur with Jim. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. And I can only take a little bit of the credit, as I mentioned. I really, you know, I have to commend, you know, everybody at the SDG detachment, from, you know, my 2 staff sergeants that were putting in 18-hour days, ensuring, and one of my sergeants, you know, we were in the Long Sault boardroom. It was the war room. You know, just coordinating shifts and coordinating logistics and coordinating, you know, with our policing partners, and just, you know, a month working, you know, 7 days a week for a month, and being away from your family. That's a lot for anybody, right? And there was a lot of responsibility, you know, placed on them, and a big ask placed on them. And like I said, I can't express how proud I was, and, you know, how well they represented, you know, not only themselves, but the organization and really the detachment.
Motion to accept the January to March 22 OPP report. Moved by Brian, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Carried. Mobile Crisis Response Team Enhancement Grant. That the one we already talked about? I think so.
Yes, it is.
Discretionary funds for PSB for community police activities.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have the following recommendations. It was brought to my attention, and I would, possibly someone from the board could help me on this one, but it was brought to my attention that in the past, through the discretionary funds, the board has provided the detachment with funds to purchase community service materials and memorabilia. It's been about, I was informed that it's been about 3 years since we've made an ask for one. And I was recently at a policing open house in Cornwall's East End. And my community service officers were commenting that we were running a little desperately low on just memorabilia or supplies, you know, that we give out during community festivals, you know, when we have a community service officer to children and just members of the public. So I would be asking for $2,500 of the $5,000, pending the board's approval, so that we could replenish those supplies. I think with COVID, I won't say behind us, but us living with COVID, and we're going to have a very busy summer with festivals and all sorts of activities. One of my priorities is, to really have the members of my detachment out in the community and well represented at those festivals. And, I think it's always nice that, if we can send the kids or, interested parties home with something that represents not only the SDG OPP, but the board as well. I think it's a really good thing, and it's a really positive thing to promote the good work the police do. The next one would be $750 to Baldwin House, which we have traditionally always supported. $750 to Naomi House. $500 to St. Paul de Vincent. And if you are from the North Glengarry area, St. Paul de Vincent does a tremendous amount of community service work for for people, particularly living in Alexandria, but the greater Glengarry community, and particular to their food bank that they provide. And I know that I sit on the Community Wellbeing Council for SDG, and one of the main topics we continuously return to is food insecurity. So I think that's something that is near and dear to my heart, not only because I have a large appetite, but I just think that people should have some basic things like shelter and food, and anything we can do to help out with that would be, and quite frankly, when we donate funds to a community organization like that, the funds and their ability to buy is just much greater than us donating canned goods, right? They just have a bulk buying power and a discount power, which is well beyond what the regular citizen can do. I would also like to see, pending the board's approval, $500 to the Cornwall Community Hospital Foundation. And although we do have two other hospitals in the area, the Cornwall Community Hospitals Foundation, the Cornwall Community Hospital provides outreach services where GMH and Winchester Hospital cannot. And the Cornwall Community Hospital is the main hub hospital for our area, and I think it's very important that we continue to support that. I know certainly from a mental health perspective, and addiction services, Cornwall Community Hospital provides all of those services for all of SDG. And I think a $500 donation, just showing our appreciation and support for all of everything they do with their outreach services for all the residents of SDG would be a nice gesture.
Discussion?
Is there a motion prepared for that request? Kimberly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have it all written down, if you'd like me just to state it.
Please.
$2,500 to the OPP for community service materials and memorabilia. $750 to Baldwin House, $750 to Naomi House. That should bring us to $4,000. $500 to St. Paul de Vincent, and $500 to the Cornwall Community Hospital Foundation.
Are any of these different organizations requested funding from the counties? Or have we given any money towards these different organizations, part of our community? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, none of them are not directly, I don't think. Certainly not for the supplies, Baldwin House. No.
I agree.
Okay, so the motion's moved by Jim, seconded by Brian. All in favor? Carried. Detachment Action Plan, PSB priority setting.
Yes, Kim, had the survey been distributed? Yes. To, yes. The OPP one. So as you may be aware, the detachment or the OPP is circulating right now a survey with regards to what you would like to see in the report. But for me, I wanted to, Mr. Chair, I would like the assistance of the board with our next detachment action plan. And I'd like potentially, maybe an ad hoc meeting where we could get together and really, look at what we see together as the priorities for the detachment in the next action plan. And I would also like a portion in there where the board is directly involved. So not just with the guidance, not just with the guidance and the recommendations, but where the board is directly involved in not just setting those priorities, but how can the board be involved in helping us achieve them? This is a strategy that I employed in Hawkesbury, and it was very, very successful. Not only did it give me as the commander a better idea what the community saw and what they wanted as priorities, but also it really gave the board a greater standing within the community. And, we were able to promote that relationship between the board and the detachment and sort of saying, no, these aren't just things that the detachment commander comes up with and, through their policing data, but this is actually what the board is hearing through the communities and through the United Counties and through their individual municipalities and what they really want to see as priorities within. And I would respectfully request that we make that a priority in my next action plan, and that the board be heavily involved. Kim, I don't know if the board has ever held out ad hoc meetings before to do such a thing, but I'm due to report on my next report. But in the fall, I will be starting the new plan, and that is really, Mr. Chair, when I would like the board to sit down with me and where we could really, get together. It can be an ad hoc meeting, over some wings and potential beverage, and where we really, hammer out some priorities together.
Yeah, so after the meeting is adjourned, we're gonna fill out these two surveys here, and then Kimberly will compile them into one and send them in. OPP contract renewal.
That's me. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, board members. This is something I was thinking about last week, and Kimberly and I were chatting about it. The end of 2022 is the end of our current contract with the Ontario Provincial Police. It was a 4-year contract, I believe. The reason I'm raising it this year and at this point is that it's an election year, as we all know, so our timelines are off this year. Typically, the process would be the municipal policing, I would get in touch with them, work with them, they'd provide a draft proposal. Their reps typically come to the board from HQ to talk about the renewal, any changes in terms of personnel, strength at the detachment, ancillary costs and things like that. We have a discussion here. get some direction from the board, and then there's some follow-up discussion with those individuals. And then once the board is satisfied, then it has to come back to county council for ratification. And typically, we would do that in December, but this year with the election being in October, we're not, our first meeting, and we may or may not be in lame duck, which means we can't do anything anyway. But our first opportunity to pass it would be December. So we're not having a council meeting from October till December. It would be a tough thing to just simply, I think, here's the new council, here's your $10 or $11 million contract, please sign it. So Mark, I'm looking at you, I'm wondering if we can maybe initiate that process a little bit earlier. We're no different than any other detachment because we're all in the same boat in terms of timing and things like that. So I think the sooner the better, the sooner we can get some type of proposal, you know, something that we can kind of get our teeth into and meet with the folks, go from there. So that's why I'm tabling it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I can absolutely get a hold of the Municipal Policing Bureau. I have a very good, very good contact there, and we can absolutely get that ball. I will ask that, given the circumstances, and I'm sure the Municipal Policing Bureau will be more than willing to move in that fashion, particularly since, you know, previous to the previous billing model, we were a tier, SDG has always been a tier 1 contract, one of the preferred contract, in fact, within the Ontario Provincial Police. So they would be very eager to get a proposal to the counties to bring to council. Yeah, absolutely. I will absolutely bring that forward this afternoon.
Okay, so there's no correspondence, new business. Actually, I had a couple little things, one on the bright side, one not quite so bright a side. On the bright side, I was kind of impressed a couple of weeks ago when an OPP officer showed up at my office door wondering if somebody was illegally burning on my property, but it was me. But on the not so bright side, I haven't talked to anybody about this because it just happened not very long ago. I would like to recommend that when you have one of your meetings with sergeants, and then they could relay it to the rest of the officers about how signal lights work on farm equipment. I was notified by one of my employees that he was going on County Road 7 one night with the tractor and corn planter and grain or fertilizer cart. And there's at least 4 sets of signal lights on them. He had them on to turn left, and he looked in his mirror and he seen a car coming. Sure enough, OPP officer passed him on the left with the signal lights on. Now, I know signal lights on farm equipment doesn't work like it does on cars. If you're turning left, they're all yellow, not red, and they flash fast, and the right-hand one stays on solid. But I'm not so sure that everybody knows this. So, if he wouldn't have been second-guessing himself and looking in the mirror, guess what? We could have had a major crash, and it'd be our fault. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly will say that, first of all, we don't want any type of major collision, and that certainly a refresher surrounding farm equipment when they are traveling on whether county roads or municipal roads would never be a bad thing. So I can certainly have my traffic sergeant prepare something, send it to me for my review, just so that we can ensure that all of our patrol officers. I send out a weekly, what I call the SDG weekly. So it is a weekly bulletin or update to the detachment around a variety of topics, training, what's new in the HTA. I try and keep it to 4 or 5 bullet point paragraphs, but I can certainly, but I do attach attachments at times where I see them necessary. So we can definitely prepare something and have that out to the everybody in SDG for a good reminder.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, certainly that's an issue. I mean, I've seen myself combines turning left and getting cars ahead of me, trying to pass, and then bang, near where I live. So I think part of it is as well as educating the public. They're impatient. So I don't know. I mean, we can tweet stuff out. We can ask local municipalities to tweet some out, but I think it's education. When you're around large farm equipment, you got to pay a lot of attention, and don't try to pass whenever there's a side road coming up. Don't try to pass a large vehicle. Just be patient, but you know, we can get the message out. Whether or not people listen is a different story. But yeah, good point.
Mr. Chair, I could also have my my media officer, potentially, you know, over a month, maybe 4 weeks, every week. Yeah, we could coordinate with the United Counties, where we could have a series of, you know, media related, whether through social media or conventional media, just public reminders, public education about, you know, rules of the road and traffic safety surrounding motor vehicles approaching farm equipment.
On another matter, just on the weekend, my friend and I were on a bike, and I suppose you heard there was a issue there at the traffic circle in Long Sault on Sunday, where this vehicle lost the wheel, and it caught fire, and the guy put it out with his extinguisher. But of course, when it's at the traffic circle, all the vehicles coming from the west, it's only one lane coming to the first circle. My friend and I decided to take it upon ourselves to, which we both are very well qualified to do that, is do some traffic control to help the vehicles keep moving. We were there 20 minutes before anybody arrived. Mark Evans was the first officer to get there. But he made a comment which I wasn't very happy. Here we are keeping the traffic going and flowing well, and no incidences. I can guarantee you there would have been an accident because everybody's trying to back up at the same time to get out of the way. And we kept the traffic going and flowing really, really well. We had to reroute them into the gas station, and they came around. There was no accidents, no nothing. Everybody was smiling and thanking us, actually, to keep the traffic moving. And it was like 20 minutes. So can you imagine how much traffic would have been backed up? Anyway, I know Mark well. I went to work with him, so I'm not really upset with him. What he said was, you know, you guys can get in trouble if or be responsible if there was an accident for doing this. I said I took courses on this too, so I said, you know, I didn't. That's all. I just left it like that. So I don't want you to go back and say anything. I just want to get your thoughts because like Mark's a friend of mine too, and it's just it doesn't matter who was there. It was just he was there, and he was the first one there, as I said, but. Is it okay for us to do that? If not, I won't do that again, you know?
I'm going to give you two answers, Mr. Mayor, and this is where I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Okay. Give me your professional one and your friendly
So
one.
my personal one is that, right, obviously, you know, we very much appreciate your assistance, right? It is the practical thing to do. If there are no serious, you know, it wasn't a collision, right? It was a mechanical failure where, you know, it was a mechanical failure, and that's a busy traffic circle, especially last weekend, right? Where we all know Parkway is open, all the campgrounds are open, that McEwen's and that area right there, it's a busy spot, right? I believe that's the reason the county's put in that traffic circle to begin with. So very much appreciate you providing that type of assistance. My professional answer is that, you know, technically Mark is not wrong, right? The directing traffic in emergency services, right, is the police's or another emergency responders' responsibility under the Highway Traffic Act, right? And I think Me knowing Mark, right, I think he was looking out for the greater good, right? Just didn't want you to.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't want you to put yourself in a situation where if there was a collision or something secondary happened, he just didn't want you to be responsible, and possibly his delivery and his communication could have sort of been a little better.
Said it. I mean, maybe once he saw me, he was different. His delivery was different. But my other friend, you could be in trouble if there's an accident. That's okay. But the thing is, like the individual, it's the fire department's responsibility to put out fires. But if that fellow wasn't there with his extinguisher, that whole vehicle would have been up in flames. You know what I mean? So he was there. So he did his due diligence and good citizen, and that's what we did. So where does that end, and where does it start? So anyway, that's just what I don't really need an answer for that. But I mean, people have to do what they have to do for the community too. Let's just not leave it up to the police to look after things for us. Same as the people in the municipality. We want people to take care of some of their own responsibilities other than always bringing it back to us and thinking that we're all in be-all or not. There's another thing I wanted to bring up, if I may, Mr. Chair. I'm still getting some complaints, mostly on the people on Cameron Road, and I think there's going to be a petition coming from what they're saying, but there's still a lot of firearms, especially the AR rifles and all that going for target practice. I mean, and I know that the police have to be well practiced with doing this firearm so that they get to be experts with that, and they have to do it somewhere. So I just think that on Sunday they can't sit outside. From what they're saying is sitting on a patio, or I know there was one individual said, I had a wedding on Saturday or Sunday, and he called the president of the handgun club and asked if they could not shoot for that little bit of a time, and all it was bing, bang, bang, boom, boom, boom the whole time. Like there's no thought or respect of the community, I don't think, on his part. But he could have said something maybe to the OPP or whatever. I don't know what translated there, but I think that there's a time. Could they not maybe do this on like just give one day rest for the people that live in that community rather than being there all the time? I was there back in the 80s on council as a councillor, and I really don't remember that. It was just a handgun club that was made the request to shoot there, and then all of a sudden there's more organizations in there shooting, and it's of course creating a problem for the neighbors that are living there. And I just wonder what's your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I can tell you that, so first of all, the OPP only shoot there once a week. So we only shoot there once a week. But that range, we as an organization, and a lot of the organizations across, a lot of the policing organizations across the province are really struggling with finding adequate space to ensure that our members are getting adequate firearms training and requalifications. I would absolutely support that. There should be times like that. That is an appropriate place to have a range, but there should be times where the noise level is restricted. I don't know if there are other policing partners shooting on the weekends. I know the Cornwall Community Police Service uses that range as their outdoor range. I'm not sure where the RCMP or CBSA are going right now. I know our former range on Willie Allen Road, again, right? We never shot on the weekends. There was nobody ever there on the weekends. So, but I would absolutely support that. Some type of. I'm always about a mediated solution where the club sort of agrees between these hours and these hours. On weekends we would limit our noise level or our hours of operation. I'm always in support of that, but I would also be in support if it's becoming a nuisance to the residents, in that area, then, you know, it might need to be some type of, there might need to be some type of bylaw enacted in regards to that.
I appreciate your comments on that because I will bring it up to council and I'll say what you said in terms of your support. But what I'm thinking is what would be the best. I'm thinking of, you know, the OPP, what, if they're there Sunday or Saturday, maybe change the day. I just think, they said that they don't want to stop the shooting because they know it's important to a lot of organizations too. But I'm just thinking, do we send a letter to you maybe and asking you what days you would prefer or not to prefer to be there, so that maybe we can get maybe Sunday as a day of rest, if you will, for not any shooting going on there at all. Would that make sense?
Well, respectfully, Mr. Mayor, like I can absolutely provide a personal opinion, which I think I did just now more than a policing opinion. From a policing opinion, I think it would be, you know, I don't think it would be within my mandate to sort of support or not support anything of that type. Again, from a policing standpoint, right? If there is a, you know, if there were a public safety concern, then absolutely, right? Absolutely, that would fall within my mandate, and it would be something. I think the best course of action for the citizens working on that road, and you know, and the possibly council again, is to, you know, work with the club's president and board on sort of bringing the concerns forward first to them, and then, you know, about the hours of shooting, about the increase of the increase of hours of shooting, and then sort of from there sort of escalate it potentially up to the United, because would that fall into the township or would that fall to the United Counties? Local? Yeah, it would be up to the municipality, but my suggestion would be, once again, right, if, you know, if there is a community group that is organizing, try and work with the board of the shooting club, bring those concerns forward, and if that is, you know, an unsuccessful venue, then I think approaching your municipality and council and sort of saying, okay, do we need a some type of bylaw here with, you know, some type of noise bylaw particular, because you do have that power under the Municipalities Act. You're welcome.
Okay, motion for adjournment. Moved by Jim, second by Brian. All in favor? Carried. Okay.